Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Boy, am I excited for today. Before I introduce you to our guest, here is a quote just for this episode. Plans are only good intentions unless they immediately degenerate into hard work. Peter Drucker. Our guest today knows more than a thing or two about hard work and plans generating not only into hard work, but value creation, getting right to the bottom line. He's a regular guest on the Culture Matters podcast. If you haven't listened to episode 166, get your ass over there after this episode. If you haven't listened to episode six, we're talking
My,
episode six of the Culture Matters podcast. Our guest has been on episode six in season one, and we're into almost 800. They've been not only a friend of the Culture Matters podcast, but a someone that has been relied on in not just the original industry that they started in the hospitality space, but now many industries. They're an ear, they're a brain, they're hands. They get things done. They're the founder of Bottom Line Consulting. Drew Carballo is here to talk about the bottom line, what that means, and how. Hey, we're kicking this off basically right before the new year. So clearly, you're getting down to to business. So thanks for coming back on the show, brother.
oh, of course. Thanks for having me again. Episode 6 is my favorite one, by the way.
Like
I s-
of the 800 or just
no
your.
of the ones I've done. Of the ones I've done. It's the worst one of the 800, probably.
I would like to know. You've listened to that first one. What would you say is your like that episode six versus today in reflection? What would you say you've improved on or like evolved the most as a leader, CEO since then?
I'd say really just understanding the big picture. I mean, if you go back to episode 6, I do speak a lot about, operating, dealing with, the executive level. At that time, I wasn't actually on the executive team. I was just very close and supporting and starting to kind of get brought into the circle a little bit more with the group I was with. LDV Hospitality, which I love, family, of course. Um, I think that's when I really started even opening my mind. And when I was talking about it, was really as I was growing into that, higher role, um, the organization and working outside, with other people. Um, but that really is what like led me into understanding, the bigger picture, um, and operating more on like a grandstand. I don't know to put it like a not being so granular only and
Mm,
understanding the big picture and how, you're balancing out all these pieces to get to that.
mm. Where do you think people, those that do have the big picture, like the founders that you've worked along or observed or seen, or CEOs, where they can how do you think they've tempered it, the big picture, with the bottom line best in your
You
experience?
know,
Because yeah, as you've navigated all these different
I
environments.
I think it all depends. When I was with the restaurant group, we were very weekly P&L basis, um, very granular with that, really diving into the numbers while also making sure that we're, balancing out the brand vision, right? And making sure we're giving that experience that we were looking to give. Whereas when I left them and I started doing consulting, you know, I keep my mind open. Some people looked at it differently, right? When I was with a bakery company, oldest bakery company in Philadelphia, Termini's, and they had a great mindset that it took a little while for myself to even understand. And I did about a year and a half with them. Whereas we weren't looking at the P&Ls; they were all about the check average. It was all about the check average and not gouging the guest, but they were true believers in if we can keep the volume up, right, and bring the people in and give them that full experience and sure they're getting all the rides and they're getting a tour and they're getting the hello and the uniforms are tight and getting that full experience, everything else will work out. goods will work out, the labor will work out. It really came down to the sales associates and the management team to make sure that they were executing that full vision. And
Wow.
I think in the beginning it took me a little while. I'm so the P&L, bottom line. That's my whole thing, and they were right, and it worked for them. And in my learning experience, I'm happy that I kept an open mind immediately and I bought into that for that operation. I don't think that would
Wow.
work everywhere. Uh, but for their operation, it was very successful and they knew what they were doing. I mean, 123 years, obviously, something. You got a good run and you're doing something right. But
Wow.
I think it was a good personal experience where somebody else probably would have fought that concept where I didn't push against it. I went with it, and I made sure we stayed on the path for to go with that vision. And like I said, it worked. And the guests got a great experience. All the numbers worked out. It was a smart, simplified way to look at it instead of overcomplicating the whole week. It
Wow.
was guest experience and production. Focus on that.
What is we just had recently Leo Russi on the show talking about
I
customer
saw.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, the customer experience. What in all the various environments that you've been in as a leader, what's your take on customer experience and how that comes to the
Oh,
bottom line, top line, affects the culture, the business?
I think the customer experience, hospitality, I think that changes everything. I think that's what differentiates you from all the other places. If we're talking in the restaurant world, usually people get a little nervous when other restaurants are opening around them. I love that, right? I think that's what's going to differentiate us between everyone else is the hospitality. I think I talked about on here in the past, like things are going to go wrong, especially in restaurants in service in general. It's all about how do you overcome those situations? How do you handle them? You're going to overcook a steak. There's going to be a delay and you overbooked. The wrong wine's going to be brought out. But are you heading that on? Are you owning it? Are you fixing it? And you understanding? A lot of times people just want to be heard. And I think the hospitality guest experience, you know, that's probably what differentiates how 75% of restaurants fail in the first 2 years,
Hmm.
and the other ones that succeed. At the end of the day, is the food really that amazing? Yes, I'm sure it's amazing. Obviously, but no matter how great the food is, something can go wrong. And I think if you don't fix that and you're not hospitable towards that and you're not listening to the guest and understanding and taking steps to show that as an organization or a location you care, I think you're losing the overall fight. And then, it all starts falling apart in my opinion. So I'm a big believer in that.
What about what advice do you have for listeners on how to navigate problems as they arise? Do you go through a mental process in your
I
head, or is it more nuanced? But like, what do you, how do you take back control and move forward?
I think the culture that you set with the team, I always say like I don't mind if somebody's going to make a mistake. Let's just not make the same mistake twice. Um, management, setting up your management for success to your director level, that communication between the two, for your general manager to know whatever decision they make in the moment, you're going to be supportive of that. If it's wrong, you're going to explain why and how you would have did it next time. But if you're really making sure that we're taking care of that guest, I'm not worried about you comping something and you did a full comp for $285 when I would have desserts. I give up to 285 and then return to spend another 300, 400. Then, the other way around. And great, we saved 180 bucks and you comped, 105, but I'll never see that person again. Because then that
Mm.
travels, I forget the multiple. I believe they say, for every happy guest, it's a possible multiple of 17 where the word of mouth
Whoa.
travels. Um, and you can recap that back into your organization. So,
What
you know,
about unhappy guest?
yeah, well, same thing. I don't know the math on that one. I'm trying to not live in the unhappy world. But I've had full-blown plates fall on people, you know, in all white, and they've left happy. Again, I think it's all about, you know, how you can handle it. Can you assure them you understand? You ruin their evening. You're going to take care of the dry cleaning. You're going to purchase the clothes. Let's get the dinner back on track. Like,
Wow.
it's really not the end of the world. It's definitely a negative experience immediately. But again, it's how can we turn that around to, you know, rectify it and get them to come back at the same time. You know, I've always joked, you know, I'm usually where I'm handling negative situations, right? And I've always said that, you know, some of the best business relationships, friendships, contacts I've ever met, you know, are with people where it started with a negative interaction.
Really?
It's just all about how you turn it around.
Yeah. How do you turn it around?
You know, it all depends. But again, if you can hear them and understand, I mean, you know, I don't want to get into too specifics, but we had a negative viral situation occur years ago where a manager just made a mistake, and it's definitely was the manager's fault. It led to something going viral. But you know, being able to meet with that person and to let them know, like, listen, you know, I'm sorry, they were wrong. We're rectifying. I hear you, and I just wanted to say that in person as well. You know, went a long way. Great relationship with the person, you know. And
Hmm.
it's funny, it's actually led to a lot more business as well, which was not the
Wow.
goal. The goal was just to show you and just to let you know we're handling it also, you know. Fortunate for the you know managers with us, but again, learning experience for them, I'm sure, for their next step in life as well. But an extremely negative situation, uh
Wow.
you know, be able to turn around positive without getting into too specific on that one. But you know, all doable, right? It's just all about how you look at it and just being genuine and real and not hiding. You know, you can't hide from, you know, the operations, the situations, the mistakes, the negatives. Because
Why not?
whether you think it's not getting noticed, it's not returning. It's getting noticed. You notice something going wrong, whether it makes you mad or not is a different story, but you notice everything, right? You know, so, you know, being able to hit those things head on and owning them in the moment, I think is, you know, invaluable.
How do you, what relationship, if at all, does trust have among the team when things are going wrong?
Again, I think that comes down to leadership, right? And I think the big connectivity is between that general manager and that director of operations. And that general manager to be able in the moment to keep us on the brand vision, you know, following the best practices of that company while also the day not being scared. You know, I had an old line with me and one of my mentors, my old CEO, and it was shoot from the hip, make a decision, ask for forgiveness later. And I think I live by that. So shoot from the hip, make a decision, ask for forgiveness later. It's a good example of you're doing what's right in the moment. Sure, 70, 80, 90% of it is correct. You know, figure the rest out
Wow.
later. You know,
Shoot from the hip, make a decision, ask for
ask
forgiveness
later.
later. I wrote that down for the New Year's episode. I'm looking for quotes
Yeah, yeah.
for the intro for that's
I
a
figured
great
that
one. I
would be
love that.
this episode. Yeah.
I love it. Uh, bottom line. What is bottom line consulting to you?
So how it really came together was I was having a lot of growth with the restaurant group. I was commuting to New York daily. I was just at a point in my life where I loved, and to this day loved, LDV hospitality and still talk to everyone in the organization daily. But I was at a point where to continue growing, you know, we had to move to New York or Miami to really take that next leap within the organization. And, you know, at life, me and my wife, we were just having a baby. You know, a lot of family lives between Philadelphia and Shore, the Atlantic City and Ventnor. And, you know, it was a very tough decision in leaving. I think about it every day and I miss them every day, which really explains how amazing their team and culture is. such a young, you know, vibrant organization. Um, it just was the best thing at the moment for my family. I'm also a big believer things happen for a reason. It can always come back around, you know? Uh, so that's when I went over to the bakery company and started my consulting name LLC. And the goal was honestly, the goal is not really to even let people know that technically I'm consulting. The goal is really to, be within the organization. Now, smaller engagements, smaller projects, yes, of course. But when there was really more of those long-term goals of we're at A, we need to get back on track to B. We don't know how to jump from A to B to do that in a cost effective way. So to be able to get to that, whether it was 6 months or 14 or 15 months, right? Hey, we're now at step B, leveling out. It's my time to fade away. Here's the plan to place this person in. This is the number. This is how this is all structured now. And you're actually going to save money, and it's what's best for the business. Everybody's happy, right? So it kind of just naturally came together, due to not being the mindset and ready to move, actually how it came about, which then led to other projects, other engagements. And it's been going well.
What are some of the
Obviously,
questions, or go ahead, sorry.
no, go ahead.
What are some of the questions that people ask, like people as in potential recipients of the bottom line consulting, the buyers? What are some of the questions that they ask, or concerns, or pain points? Because maybe there are listeners that are going through those things
Yeah,
now that we can tap into for them.
I think again, it's about the communication, right? I like to make sure when I'm talking to the ownership that I understand what is their goal. And I'm also, I don't even really like the term as much as consulting because it sounds like you're kind of just around and you're kind of watching and pointing and rolling out. And I'm not like that. I'm a leader. I'm in it. I'm on the calls, you know. And when you're discussing these things, it's really building the relationship. If you're discussing with somebody and you're only going to be giving them 25 hours a week of support. That's what it says on paper. Like I'm really around 24/7, but I'm guaranteeing you I can be in the building for 25 hours, right? Which is not common. The way I've been doing engagements, I'm more of like all in. Again, it's like as if I'm with the actual organization title. No one really knows the overall goal other than me and the ownership. Um, and us like getting to that, but being at an understanding that it's their baby, right? Whether they're actually their money provider for their overall umbrella, I don't think matters. I think it's more of they're invested, they care about the direction, and they want to get to their goal. And if you can understand that and assure them that, you're going to care about it as much as they do, as if you're the owner, I think the rest just comes together.
Yeah, what leads to what would you say leads to hiring someone like yourself? What are some of the things that lead to that? For the listeners that are thinking, oh, wait, why don't I just hire somebody to do that?
Right. I think places aren't big enough to where they have this multi-unit organization with a director of operations that is going to be able to build that manager and have tools and Excel sheets and things in place where it can instantly click like, oh, this is how we should handle this, or this is what we could do to fix that. Hey, look at this sheet, let's adjust it and work for you. Do you like it like this? Do you like it like that? And really setting them up for success. So when you have that group, you might have a super successful restaurant. There's usually a big jump from general manager now to direct ownership. It's a large jump, in my opinion. Common and smart, but the general manager being confident to talk to the owners and his 5 investors that are millionaires from whatever other industries they're in and very good at what they do, that can be a little complicated and probably a little intimidating for the general manager who might still be trying to grow as well. So I think being that connectivity between the two and taking it off of the ownership's plate, because at the end of the day, the owner, they're not director of operations, right? They got other things going on. This is their, investment or passion project or place they want to have fun, or, you know, second property that they own when they really started somewhere else, or maybe it is their main thing, right? If there's main thing, then they're probably there and they don't need it,
Mm,
right? But, being that connectivity of teaching the general manager, how to lead and run the show, right? Or at least grow from where they're at to getting better, to making sure the ownership is happy and getting the results, that they want. And I think we mentioned this in the last episode, but you know, that's a learning experience. And you can only learn in that way of how to talk to somebody on the executive ownership level from experience, really, and you either have that FaceTime or you don't. So to being able to share and provide that from your learning experiences is good or bad. And I always joke, I had a lot of
mm.
bad ones. I learned the
Huh.
hard way for a long time, but now it's set me up for success, and if you can share that and teach when to talk, when not to talk. This is how you listen. Maybe don't present this yet till you have all the information, because when you're speaking to executive ownership level, they're taking your words immediately. They're ready if you're presenting, ready, and you don't have all the pieces yet. And even for me, I'm a talker. I'm active. My hand. You got to learn when they're like, all right, hold on. Let me keep this in my. Let me get more info. And sometimes they'll catch wind. Hey, I heard this happened, or I call. Yeah, I'm looking into it. I'll update you. I'm not ready to update you yet. You got to give them the pieces, or everything starts spiraling out of control. So to learn and understand that is difficult. And again, I learned it over the years. I mean, it's been about 19 years, which is kind of weird to say out loud.
Wow.
On the upper, general manager up level in the restaurant world, but it probably took a long time to learn that aspect of it. So if I can share and teach that, as well as operationally and labor and cost of goods and hospitality and the culture with the team and balancing it all out, it really can get them a better result. And then you're not needed, so it kind of works out. Then you can kind of fade away, but you're still always available, right? There's always going to be that relationship, because you do care, right? You care as if you're a part of it, because if you genuinely care about it as much as the person that's engaging you to do so, why would you disappear?
Mm,
you know
wow. I wrote
yeah.
this down. Yeah, that's almost 7,000 days. It's a lot of time in the trenches, a lot of
Yeah, great.
hours. I don't know how many hours that
I
is.
feel it. I feel it.
Yeah, it's close to 200,000 hours, but bit, I wrote this down. Big enough as far as like that. I've got a map here.
Okay.
I wrote that big enough to need it, yet maybe too small to finance and integrate it. Like the organization, maybe
Yeah.
large enough
Yeah.
to need that type of help,
Right.
that addition, yet maybe not yet there from a what financial as well as leadership perspective. So
Yeah, and maybe it's
right
never going to get
sled.
there. Like I always say, you don't need to have 20 places. If I was personally going to own something, my personal only vision, like I'd love to have one amazing place, right? It's like that has to do with restaurants, but it's like Pat Steaks, right, in Philadelphia. They got one. Like other brands, from Philadelphia, have numerous locations. They got one great spot, but it's open 24 hours. They know what they do great. They cook those 6 items and they execute it in the way they do. So again, if you can help and be that connectivity, you might not never get to the point where again you would need that COO, director of operations. If you can build the current structure, and I'm a believer in like you can build every situation differently, you know,
Mm,
and that was a big thing with the bakery group, or even previously with a franchise group that I was just with. But you can structure it to whatever's going to make sense for the organization itself. I don't like to look at things as they're very black and white and it has to be a certain way. And I think that's where people get a little lost. And, that will get you a large result. Obviously, there's groups out there, 40, 50, locations, Um, but I feel like you have a lot of more problems in the meantime in that way, just from my personal experience.
How important is it to build a strong foundation?
Yeah, I mean the foundation's everything. I mean, there's two sides of it, right? There's the front of house facing side and the back of house side, right? So there's the front of house, the guest experience, the aesthetics, the hospitality, the marketing, the talk of the town culture of it. Where there's the back of house side, in a more, larger aspect of the organization, the structure, the support, the ownership, the brand vision, the execution, the bottom line that makes sense. I mean, the bottom line doesn't make sense, it's not going to stay open, right? So at the end of the day, it's gotta all level out.
Where does that adage come from? Or like, isn't there a saying like restaurants don't make any money?
Yeah, I mean, restaurant margins used to be on the high end, maybe 12 or 15%. I'd say after COVID, it might be more of like 5 or 7. It's definitely a rough world. Uh, again, is that, a one off? Is that,
But the
you're,
reason I bring that up is like it seems like that then the bottom line becomes more important than ever.
oh, I mean, with anything, I think the bottom line's obviously important. That's why I named, my whole thing after it. But yeah, I mean, you don't want to be bleeding money unless it's like a passion project, maybe. But yeah, I mean, it's like any business. Listen, operations in my brain is operations, right? In my world, I happen to be more focused on the food and beverage world. Uh, Again, I just was with a franchise group for a couple months, 120 locations, great group. Not as much, you know, with the P and L. The P and Ls would fall on the franchisee, right? But there still was obviously internal P and L, internal organization with corporate and so forth. But the the goal is you need to level out. Um, um, it's important, in my opinion. Obviously, it's important.
What are some elements that help the front of the house and the back of the house kind of sing in unison
I
versus
it
be
comes down to
siloed?
the people. I think the people in the communication. I said in the past, not because of the name, but I think the culture is really big. I think the culture of understanding the business aspect of it, with also the culture of understanding, again, the brand and the vision, and the goal of creating this beautiful, space and experience. Is that super high end and suits and ties and dresses, or is it casual and fast
Hmm.
paced and comfortable, t-shirts and sneakers and nice jeans and whatever that goal is. But if you can get those two worlds to understand each other and be supportive, you know, and you got to understand the people. You're calling somebody in accounting and you need help with back invoices to get the plumber in the building because you got to get things fixed before you open for service. And someone on the accounting team might not be as friendly or as understanding or moving as fast, but that doesn't mean they're not a friendly person. It's just that is their job. They are in a different position, in a different world, in a different culture where their numbers, responsibility, invoices, payments, statements, ownership, and you got to understand. And, I'm a big person in building that relationship. I used to
Mm.
joke when I was with the one restaurant group, I used to call the accounting team all the time. Your weekend? How's the dog? For no reason.
Really, really.
And then later, when I was in a jam, I'm like, listen, I need help. I need this. No problem. I'll look into it. Let me get approval right now. I'll call you right back. Like we worked well together, but I took the time out to get to know, those people. And
What do you say to the leaders unwilling to do that or
I think you
unaware?
just make life harder. At the end of the day, it's all one team. I don't know. I don't look at it as like the front of house and the back of house, but of course the servers or the bartenders or bussers or back waiters, right? They're not going to be communicating with that side of the company. So again, I think that's where the management and ownership needs to really be in line and communicative. So then it really opens both sides to be able to talk well together, you know, and support each other, right? If the manager's pushing for something, it's probably for the overall experience that all those other people I was just stating are the ones that are executing it, right? At the end of the day, I'm not selling the line. That's why there's great sommeliers. Like, I don't, like, I'm here to support you. I'll keep inventory tight. We'll make sure we're using the inventory dollars correctly to set you up to sell, right? Without gouging the guest and just giving a good experience with a lot of options at $75 a bottle. We'll have options at $225 a bottle. Like, find a nice balance. I don't like the gouge. I'm a volume guy. I'd rather personally, depending on the situation, right? Sometimes it's a business meeting to impress or, elevated taste, but, I'd rather get, $300 bottles on the table than one $200 bottle on the table. I mean, it's simple math, right?
Mm,
Uh, but to me, it's more than the money. I have 3 bottles of wine. The table's probably having a blast. They're celebrating. Again, that's going to travel, right? 4 people are at the table. If that travels to the 17 other people
wow.
from each of the four, right? It's now we're talking about a strong foundation. You know, now when there's am I driving into the city or am I driving over to New Jersey? Right? They're both 15 minutes away. But now all right, if I go to the city, we'll go there. We might jump around and the dollars might spread out. If I drive over to New Jersey, I'm locked in and I'm there, which is great for that location because now we're dining. Probably when we're done, we don't want to drive to it. Now we're going to their bar. It gets the bar team involved. Like, it all rolls in together. So I'm a believer in all those little things that add up.
Mm. Last question out our listeners, what types of values, right, or behaviors, character traits would you say that the types of people that you serve, they embody? So we're talking about the clients here, the organizations that are looking to bring somebody like with your brains, your experience, your get shit done attitude in. What are some of the values that you seek in partnership?
Again, just, being able to get across that, like, you understand where they're coming from and where they're trying to go. I think that's really important. I don't like to overcomplicate it. I listen. You tell me what you need. I explain what I do and how I think about it. And if those goals align, then maybe we can figure something out together. And then is that clarity, right? Is that a short term? Is it long term? Is it replacing? Is it supporting? I like to really simplify it. But again, getting across that, like, I care. I think that's a big one, right? I'm sure people come in, they're just dropping invoices and it's trying to make that comfortableness of, hey, here's what we agreed to and here's the contract. You're agreeing, I'm agreeing, great. But then I like to build immediately. Oh, well, we'll get you lined up or as soon as we can. Oh, that's all right. I'm not going anywhere. We just agree. I'm here. Like, starting to make it a little more casual and partnership of the message you got across. It's so, contracts and invoices, they're like scary in a way, right? You're taking a chance. You're paying for a result. You're probably paying some of it up front or structured out and now required to sign something. So you're already on edge. The process didn't even start. You didn't even see any results yet. So I like to try to ease it immediately. Of, we'll figure it out. I'll see you next week. We'll meet up before I start. Like, I try to, ease in of, it's not so transactional. The
What
same way
what
you don't
sticks
want the
out?
experience to feel like that.
What would stick out on the what would stick out to you that somebody's not ready for something like that? Like a client is not ready for that degree of intensity and help and attention to detail and care.
I would say probably letting go and letting the process start a little. If you want to micromanage, the service coming in, you're only going to get the same result that you were getting prior, right? Like if you're being open to trying a new avenue, you gotta let it occur a little. Now we should be doing one-on-ones so I can explain where we're at and where we're going. And I think that's probably a hiccup that people occur. I don't think they're communicating well, which then, leads to, that ownership feeling uneasy, which is totally understandable, right? All these great aspects we said, their project, their passion, their investment. Um, but also having the confidence of like, I need a week, I need 2 weeks. I'll update you every 2 days, but like, creating room for to let it happen, and letting go of that. If something happens, like anything, right? It's hard. You ever lend your car to somebody?
Oh yeah.
Nerve
Yeah, he
wracking
crashed it.
experience. Yeah. Well,
He crashed it.
even if you didn't crash it, right? It could be your brother, sister, best friend. It's always a little nerve wracking. At the end of the day, it's your insurance, it's your personal automobile that you need tomorrow or later or in an hour, right? And even though you really trust the person, you like them a lot, and you're related to them, even, it's always a little nerve wracking. I've never met anyone. It's just like, so and so's got my car. I don't care what kind of car you have. It's, that's like my analogy of like kind of how it goes. It's like you got to assure everything's gonna be all right. You know?
Now I know what my wife's feeling when I take our car out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, in closing, how can our guests, how can our listeners uh, get to the bottom line here and get a hold of you? Fastest way to communicate with you. Like, what's your IG? How can they follow your
Uh,
journey?
my
Get in
Instagram is
contact.
just Drew Carballo underscore. So DREWCAR, B as in boy, ALLO, and then underscore the lower line. All my direct contacts on there. My full name. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Um, LinkedIn, funny comment. What a great tool to use over the last couple of years for anyone listening or watching that hasn't been on LinkedIn. I would say in the last 2 years, drastically has changed. I feel like I've actually interacted on it more than ever recently. Uh, that's a good way. Um, my phone number's out there. It hasn't changed since I joke, my phone number hasn't changed since the Nextel days, which feels like it was yesterday, but
For all our listeners,
a
I would
while
challenge you
ago.
go listen to episode 6, episode 166. Reach out to Drew, get involved. Drew, thanks for coming back on the Culture Matters podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Please leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast, and we will see you next time.